Hello there. This is Mark Lee speaking with Philippa Haynes of Insight 101, and this is a follow-up conversation that we're having after our recent webinar, Upping Your Game for Accountants and Bookkeepers. And we both had really positive feedback afterwards and thought it might be of interest to you, if you're an accountant or bookkeeper, to just hear this brief discussion, and then maybe you'll want to watch the webinar if you haven't already done so. So, Philippa, I know you don't want me to do this, but thank you very much for suggesting that we have this chat and record it.
You're very welcome. I just thought that actually a couple of the recurring themes coming up in the conversations afterwards were just kind of useful to share from my perspective. Certainly a story that you tell, which I think is so powerful around, you know, your pitch and your ideal client, really. And then the other one is about, you know, how you start to define your USP, and something really simple, which really resonated. And one of my clients literally picked up the phone after the webinar and said, you know, it was brilliant.
Oh, that is so lovely and so kind. And it's one of those things that, I mean, I know we planned the webinar, but thinking about it now that you've highlighted it, a tip that I didn't share in the webinar is something that I did many years ago. It was regularly happening on Twitter. Now I wouldn't dream of bothering to do it on Twitter, which is where you ask people who know you to describe you using 3 adjectives. And then you look for the overlap in those adjectives across different people in different contexts to see how you are perceived by other people. And that may give a revelation that you want to do things differently. In fact, it did for me, because when I first went freelance in 2006, I was continually sharing accounting and tax tips with people because it's what I'd done for 25 years of my career. And I also wanted people to stop thinking of me as an accountant and a tax advisor. And one of my pals in PR said, Mark, if you want people to stop thinking of you as a tax advisor, stop sharing tax tips. Bleeding obvious. Yeah, well, you know, what I now call a glimpse of the bleeding obvious. So sure enough, I stopped doing that, and it took a year or two, but now very few people who know me think of me as somebody who can still give advice on tax. Of course, I complicate things by being chair of the Tax Advice Network, but I always make very clear I just chair that. I'm not one of the advisors in the network. Anyway, that's the big takeaway that I got from the webinar was how cogent and logical and flowing your presentations were, your conversations were, your explanations, your advice. And I loved the way that you offered that half-hour marketing audit afterwards. And I know at the time you said you were going to limit that to 10 people, because half an hour is a good chunk of time to be giving away to people who are on the webinar. Remind me, what happened afterwards?
Well, within around 5 minutes, I got those 10 spots filled. And, you know, this week I've been talking to those people, and, you know, the feedback has been, maybe this is just how the human brain works, but that there's always one piece of information that sticks. And I think actually, you know, if you talk to presenters, normally they say, you know, there has to be one thing, you know, really one thing that comes out of it. So yeah, I mean, I hope that if those people who couldn't attend, you know, want to have a look at the recording, we'll put it in the comments below, and you know, they'll have access to time with you, and I'll also put information about my 1 hour marketing ready conversation that goes with that particular session that we had, and hope it's useful.
I'm sure it will be. The feedback I've had afterwards has all been incredibly positive, and you inspired me, because with previous webinars I've only offered a 15 20-minute chat or conversation by way of follow-up. But I thought I can't put that on a slide after you've offered half an hour, so I increased my offer to half an hour. And of course, I mean, frankly, my conversations I'd always scheduled half an hour for them anyway. So why not be more honest about it rather than it appearing to be an extra? And the lovely thing I find, and you probably found this as well, is that accountants and bookkeepers are respectful of our time. I have had so many conversations over the years with people who they're more conscious of the clock than I am and wanting to get as much covered within the scheduled time, whether it's 15 minutes, half an hour, whatever. And I find the same thing happens with my mentoring, although, as I always make clear, I'm not charging for my time there. A session is as long as it needs to be, and clients seem to appreciate that. Do you think it's worth me sharing that key takeaway that you say so many people have remembered that was so powerful?
Yeah.
So this was an absolutely true story about two financial advisors at a networking event that I was organizing. It wasn't a networking event. I was doing a presentation on effective networking skills. Long time ago, there were two financial advisors there. The first one, Mary. And by the way, if you watch the webinar afterwards, you will hear this story almost word for word because I have told it so many times. Mary stood up and she said, "Hi, everybody, I'm a financial advisor. I do all the things you'd expect a financial advisor to do, but I specialize in helping divorced women over the age of 50 who are worried about their financial future." That was awesome. It is, to this day, it is one of the best intros I have heard that was memorable at a networking event of any sort. A little while later, we heard from various people, but a little while later, another financial advisor stood up. His name was Peter, and he'd obviously been inspired by what Mary said and had adapted and changed what he was going to say because he used exactly the same formulation. He stood up and said, "Hi, my name's Peter. Like Mary, I'm a financial advisor. We do everything you expect a financial advisor to do, but I specialize in helping company directors who are worried about the performance of their company pension." Exactly the same formulation. But it doesn't work. If we just quickly examine, I think I went into more detail in the webinar, but just quickly examine those two apparently similar statements. Mary and Peter both said, "We're not going to tell you what financial advisors to do. You probably already know." Fine. Mary went in and said, "I specialize in helping divorced women over the age of 50. You can't help yourself. Do I know any divorced women over the age of 50? Can't help it. And then who are worried about the performance of who are worried about their financial future. Sadly, most of them are. And wouldn't they love to be introduced to a financial advisor who specializes in helping people just like them?" Peter talking about company directors. Everybody's a company director, and who knows if they're worried about the performance of their company pension. Not going to work. It's not going to generate a stream of introductions. And the reason I always use that example, partly because I could remember it, is because over the years, I haven't heard anything comparable from accountants or bookkeepers that is as memorable and distinct as what Mary said. And my only sadness is I don't remember Mary's full name, so I can't give her credit for it. I have had another financial advisor, a fella, tell me that he's used a similar formulation for many years, and he thinks I might have got it from him. I didn't.
You didn't.
Because I can still visualize the room in which we all were, and I know he wasn't there. But it's clearly not unique to her, but it is certainly memorable.
Brilliant. It was a great example, and that was my first interview with somebody who said, that was just a real eye-opener for them. So great stuff, and I think it's really true. So anybody who's thinking about their ideal target, really get into the minds of those people or those businesses or business owners.
And without rehearsing the key points that you made during the webinar, one of the lessons that I think we hammered home was that if you have clarity as regards who your ideal client is and who you're targeting, you are more likely to attract more of those people to your benefit and to theirs, than if you continue trying to be all things to all people, because you're not sure where to focus your attention. And I realise as I start saying that, I'm getting close to replicating what we covered during the webinar, so I'll shut
exactly. So, I mean, I was going to say we probably should wrap up so we don't divulge all of the juice. But I think it was a really good webinar. I don't think I've experienced so much positive response after one. Positive being people actually they took action. So, that's really good to know. And any further feedback, once you've had a look at this video, we'd love to hear, wouldn't we?
Absolutely. And we'll put a link to the video where we can, to a recording of the webinar. It's an hour-long webinar. We called it Upping Your Game, specifically for accountants and bookkeepers in practice. And if you're watching this interview and you can't find the link, then just get in touch with either Philippa or myself, and we will send you a link so you can watch a recording.
Right.
Philippa, thanks ever so much again for suggesting this, and I hope everybody who's watching it enjoys it and goes on to watch the webinar and to get in touch with one or both of us.
Yeah, thanks so much.